back and ready to roll for episode number 39 of the Shutdown Inning podcast. Steven Risotto here, alongside, as always, my partner in crime, Tylor Hall. Tyler, what's going on?
Hey, everybody, doing good, man. Just returning to normalcy this week after having a bunch of extra days off throughout the holiday. So trying to grind through this 5 day work week ahead of me.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely been a little bit of a grind post holidays. I guess that's just how it goes, but we're back. We're ready to go. MLB free agency, I feel like slowly but surely starting to pick up just a bit. We haven't seen some of the big names leave just yet, but we're kind of in a rumor wonderland a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you see different reports. I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit later. These teams are in, and then like 2 hours later, this team is out, or these are the front runners for this guy, and so it's just kind of like who do you want to believe, and how much weight do you want to put into it, or you just want to wait and see where they sign? Because right now it's all really speculation.
Yeah, it's speculation and it's also kind of like a lot of agent. You could tell a lot of agents have a lot of voices in have a lot of noise in some of these reports, and it's just kind of going all over the place. But I'm excited for these guys to sign. I think the hot stove season goes on for too long, and this time it's kind of dead, especially this year. But we're looking forward to some of those guys getting off the board.
Yeah, definitely need some signings to get excited about it. It does seem like this off season in particular has moved a little slower than most, which I think most people thought, once Otani signed and maybe Yoshi, that it would start speeding up. But I think teams now, with the crop that's available to them, there might be some better talent available via trade. So I think teams are kind of weighing all their options instead of just going all in on free agency like they do in some years.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And one of the trades that we saw, we did not cover this last episode, but one of the trades that we saw was Chris Sale, the veteran all-star pitcher who has had some injury-riddled seasons recently, is going to the Atlanta Braves. Vaughn Grissom is going to the Boston Red Sox. Vaughn Grissom, of course, one of the prize prospects that the Braves had, who was supposed to be the future shortstop for the organization post Dansby Swanson. It didn't happen, and now he's in Boston. And Chris Sale, who we know from Boston, he's been there a while. He's now in Atlanta.
Yeah, know him from there, know him from the White Sox. He's been one of the better pitchers when he's healthy of this generation. Um, you know, Grissom, I guess he just didn't never gelled in Atlanta. Like you said, he was looked to be the heir apparent at short and just never got it going. I know he was kind of roadblocked when he was behind Albies at second and Swanson at short. When Swanson left, I think myself, like many, thought he was just going to slide right in, and I guess they're going a different direction.
Yeah, that's
So
the ultimate bye-bye. Going in a different direction is like the nice way of saying it. But
he needs a
like
change
Chris,
of scenery.
yeah, change of scenery, I guess. But Chris Sale, like I feel like Boston, like this is a good deal for the Braves. Like Chris Sale, we know he's been injured, and we know that there's also an extension. They extended him 2 years, 38.5 million. And this is someone who I think the consensus opinion after this deal happened was like Chris Sale needs to be healthy for the postseason. And I think I agree because I could see him kind of being, if he's not your typical, traditional starter, he could be kind of a swing man a little bit in a bullpen during the
Yeah.
postseason. He's got the stuff. I think that he used to have the stuff. We don't know what he's going to be like post. He did have an 11 strikeout per nine last year, so maybe this stuff has returned, but hasn't pitched a lot the last few years. But I like the move for Atlanta at least.
Yeah, I think it could work out for Boston longer term too if Grissom can kind of find the path that everyone thought he was on again. But yeah, I really like it for the Braves. I mean, we talked last season how many times about basically the modern day murderers row they were throwing out there. So hitting's not really the problem. I mean, even pitching to an extent isn't much of a problem for them. But when you can add some depth to one of your bigger areas of need, you make that move if you're a championship ball club. And like you said, even if he's not fully healthy in the playoffs, or at least healthy in a position to start, if he can go 3 or 4 times in a series for 2 or 3 innings out of the pen, that's huge. I mean, there's a number of stories of guys who are traditional starters who come out of the pen in the postseason and make an impact. And if they decide they want him to start in the postseason, they'll probably be in a position where they can rest him a little bit, get him right in August, September, ramp him up mid-September and get him going for October time. So I really do like that deal for the Braves as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of a salary dump type of thing. And it's funny because like I always wonder about this type of stuff because the minute Sale gets dealt, the next thing we hear is like Boston is in on Montgomery. And it's like sometimes I just don't understand the business of baseball. Like they could have just
Yeah.
kept Sale, but then again, Montgomery could be an upgrade. But it's kind of funny how that entire thing works. But
Yeah, it's a shell game, man.
yeah, definitely. It's a shell game. So Chris Sale's going to end up in Atlanta. Another thing that happened also involving Boston was that the Red Sox signed Lucas. See, again, they trade Chris Sale and then they they signed Lucas Giolito to a 2-year, $38.5 million deal. So kind of just what I was alluding to.
Essentially the
Um,
same extension that the Braves gave Sale.
Yeah, and I think Sale, I think I might. That's actually tough. I don't know if I would take him over Giolito, but Lucas Giolito, a guy who was with what 3 different teams last year, had a down year, almost a 5 ERA. It didn't work out with the White Sox, or worked out a little bit with the White Sox, and then it was just downhill from there. He ended up getting claimed by the Guardians toward the end of last year. Um, a guy who probably was in line for a longer term deal if he had a better year, but kind of interesting that he ends up in Boston.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was, you know, the 2 years, like you said, I think, if he would have become a free agent last offseason, he probably gets like a 5 or 6 year deal. But you talked about, would you rather have Sale or Giolito? It's more like, would you rather have Sale or Giolito and Grissom? Because they were able to flip Sale for Grissom, use that money instead to get Giolito. He's been a guy that if he shows, if he's healthy, he's shown and has his stuff right. He's shown that he can be a contributor, probably not a one or a two like a lot of people thought he would be earlier in his career, but he could be a solid mid rotation piece for a while.
Yeah, and he's got age on his side too. 29 years old. Next year will be his age 29 season, so he's still relatively young. So that's definitely on Lucas
Yeah, so the
Giolito's side.
deal will be up after his age 30 season, so he'll be just on the wrong side of 30, but still relatively young. He could still get another deal under his belt if he pitches well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And another guy kind of in that same boat. This was a 1-year deal. Frankie Montas signed a 1-year deal with the Cincinnati Reds, 1 year, $16 million deal. And this is an example to me where if you're a pitcher and you have any type of presence at all, you're going to get paid on this market
Yeah.
if you're a starting pitcher. Like Frankie Montas getting 1 year, $16 million. Like something is strange about that. He only pitched 1 game last year with the Yankees before hurting himself. And he was supposed to be like the big Yankee addition, and it didn't end up
Yeah.
working out for him. But 1 year, $16 million for a guy who threw 1 1/3 innings last year.
Yeah, I was surprised by the amount for sure. I wasn't necessarily surprised that the Reds wanted to add some pitching, but you know, 16 million for Freddie Montas. Even last year, I guess now the year before last now, but in 2022 he only pitched like 8 games. It looks like didn't even throw 40 innings.
Good point. Yeah.
Or I guess for the Yankees with the A's added in, he was at 144. So
Oh, I see. Yeah.
still not a full workload, but yeah, man. I mean, I guess worst case, it's a 1 year deal. These teams have plenty of money, so if he ends up eating it for Cincy, then he's gone next year. But he's a guy who I think is right around 30 as well right now, so he can maybe rebuild a little value and maybe get a nice 2, 3, 4 year deal next year. But he definitely needs to bounce back. And I know we're not talking predictions or anything yet, but the Reds are a team that I think can make a little bit of noise next year. They got a nice young core, so if he can find his stuff again and stay healthy, that could be a nice signing for the Reds. At the end of the year, we might be saying that, but right now I'm like, damn, 16. Every other free agent market pitcher on the market right now, their ears had to perk up when they saw that Montas got 16 million.
No doubt about it. And we'll get to one whose ears probably did perk up in just a second. But like, no, I agree with the Reds. I like their young pitchers. I like Hunter Green a lot. I like Andrew Abbott. I thought he was good with them last year. I think you add in like, a few of the moves that Kansas City made too, where they upgraded in the rotation with Michael Wacha and a handful of others. I think that could be a really cool rotation, and they have some potential to score some runs too with some of the players that they have with Ellie De La Cruz and a few others in that lineup who are regular contributors. So Frankie Montas to Cincinnati. And then this is one that I'm sure a lot of our listeners want our opinion on. The Mariners are trading Robbie Ray, one of their prize free agent signings from a few years ago, to the San Francisco Giants in exchange for Seattle legend Mitch Haniger and veteran right-hander Anthony DeSclafani. When I found this news, Tyler, I was in the parking lot of Ceremony Ford, trying to see if I was scheduled for an oil change, and then finding out that I wasn't, that I had just gotten one, and I ended up turning around and staying in the parking lot for a little bit to digest the news, and then yeah, I don't know. It's a strange deal if you think about it. What was your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually driving down the street listening to KMBR, and Greg Papa said, "Oh, when we get back, we'll talk the trade that the Giants just made." And I was like, "What?" And so I was just a couple minutes away from where I was, so before they were even back from commercial, I was parked and looking up this deal. You know, I really don't know how to feel yet. I think a lot of it will have to do on how Robbie Ray performs. I'm assuming he won't opt out. A lot of people said, it's basically I've seen a lot of people say, it was probably before all the information was out, that it was, a money saver for the Giants, but no, not really. They sent some money back to Seattle to essentially make the 2024 payroll exchange a wash. Um, and that I've heard some say that there's not a lot of risk in this trade for the Giants, which I don't exactly see, because if Robbie Ray doesn't bounce back well from Tommy John, then you're looking at 2 years, $50 million at the back end of this thing that you're gonna have to pay a guy that isn't contributing. But former Cy Young Award winner, oftentimes bouncing back from Tommy John, pitchers can bounce back even maybe a little stronger than they were before with a healthy arm. So if he comes back as that, and he doesn't have as much time at the end of this year, because he's expected back around the All-Star break to show other teams that he's deserving of a big deal. And so as long as he can perform well and not opt out and stay and give us a solid two or three starter in the rotation, then I think it's a great move for the Giants. So it's kind of one of those ones where it's like all trades. You can't really say who won and who lost right off the bat, but I think my grade is just to be determined, incomplete at this point, Stephen.
Incomplete. Yeah. Story of my high school academic life, with assignments. No. So I see what you're saying about like the risk. First of all, I agree. I think it is a risky decision, but I also think the trade-off is trading off some short-term success for some long-term success. And what I mean by that is you mentioned how at the end of this year, if Robbie Ray isn't a contributor, that's going to be some dead $50 million at the end of the deal. But the Giants might have been looking at some dead $50 million this season with Haniger and DeSclafani. So I think basically what this move is cashing in for the long term, because the Giants were going to have Mitch Haniger. They were betting on a bounce back, just kind of the way the Giants were betting, or just the way the Giants are going to be betting on a bounce back from Robbie Ray. And DeSclafani was kind of penciled in the rotation plans as being a big question mark. They were kind of in the same spot a little bit, him and Haniger, in terms of a big unknown on whether they're going to contribute coming off of injury or not. And I think it makes sense because, like you mentioned, I don't think Robbie Ray is going to opt out unless he comes back early
And
and
like doesn't
dominates
allow a run.
yeah, as Koufax like stuff in the second half. There's no way he's opting out and he's going to get 2 years 50 on the open market. And I think the Giants would have a making of a pretty good rotation. come 2025. Maybe Keaton Winn and Kyle Harrison are a little bit more developed by then. Maybe you have another free agent pitcher or a trade coming in. Logan Webb is, of course, your constant. And again, there's nothing to say that Robbie Ray is going to be an automatic coming off Tommy John surgery. Nobody ever is. But I think it's a deal that has a lot of upside, but I think the trade-off for the long term is a good move because again, we could have said the same thing for DeSclafani and Haniger this year.
Yeah, I think that's all fair too, and things to be considered. I just think right now for a lot of Giants fans, it's probably like do they got to do more. I hope they're not
Yeah.
looking at this and saying like, we got Robbie Ray, now we'll sign like another one or two guys, like middle tier, lower free
Mhm.
agents, and say, okay, guys, we're ready for
Yeah, I
2024.
saw a
I think
tweet and
that
it said something like this is going to be Farhan's excuse not to add at the deadline for next year. It's like, oh, we got Robbie Ray
yeah,
coming back and
I
yeah.
think it was might have been Brooks. Our friend Brooks Knudsen might have said that. But yeah, deadline comes. Well, we're getting Cobb and Robbie Ray back, so it's like we're acquiring two arms, and so we're confident with who's in the clubhouse.
Yeah. And like the
But it's
minute that
also tough when,
happened, yeah, the minute
yeah,
that
go ahead.
happened and they're like, yeah, the Giants maybe are not going to be it on a frontline pitcher. Like I was thinking to myself, I was like, why? Like, why does this take them out of the running for a Blake Snell or an Inamaga or any of these Montgomery? Why does it like why
I
can't you
think
get more?
maybe they are, and they're just maybe Farhan just said that as like so they can't be used as leverage to jack up the price either on other teams or
Maybe.
they're saying to the public, hey, we don't need any more pitchers, so an agent can't come to them and be like, hey, like you need another arm. Oh no, I think we're good. um so that I think they just need that more. It's probably just extra frustrating, and we'll get to another signing in a minute, but like the Dodgers and all these other teams are acquiring guys that can help them right now, and the Giants are acquiring a guy that hopefully will be helping by the All-Star break.
Yeah, and I think if the deal doesn't work out, it's going to be a wash either way. Because I think it's the same risk for the Mariners with Haniger and DeSclafani, and
Well, no, because DeSclafani's a free agent after this year, and Haniger I think has 1 year, 15 million left. I'm not sure if I don't know if that's a mutual option or a player option. I think it's a player
yeah,
option.
I think he could opt out after this year, which Mitch Haniger's not going anywhere. He's staying in
Yeah,
Seattle. But
yeah.
yeah, no, that was an interesting
But
deal. We figured, yeah,
I get why they moved Haniger. They have a log jam in the outfield slash DH. And so the guys they moved, I think, makes sense. It's how will the return pay off for me as how will we view this trade in 3, 5, 10 years.
yeah, and I'm looking forward to revisiting that for sure. Um,
And get ready for some tight pants, Giants fans.
Exactly. Robbie Ray has the tightest pants in the game. Like Walker Buehler, his pants are tight. We know this. But Robbie Ray, it's like
Might
it's
as well just paint
insanely
them
tight.
on.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
to the point where like circulation becomes kind of an issue, I'd assume.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I almost get a wedgie just looking at the guy. Like, gotta take inventory, make sure I'm doing all right.
Yeah. So we hope that everything, all the extremities are good with Robbie Ray when he pitches, and especially coming back from Tommy John. I'm sure he'll be rehabbing in Arizona a lot. It gets warm in Arizona. Hopefully, all of his wardrobe is going to be fine with the rehab back. Um, and speaking of left-handed pitchers, Sean Manaea, who our friend Robbie Lewis mentioned that he said, "Oh, I'm not going to be shocked if Sean Manaea returns to the Giants." Well, Sean Manaea is not returning to the Giants. He goes to the New York Mets, and he gets pretty much the same deal the Giants gave him last year, but he just
Yeah.
gets that extra year, and yeah, he'll be a Met.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to know what the Mets are doing. They go in all in last year, say they're going for it. They're not gonna, they're gonna spend all the money in the world. Then they trade half the guys they signed. Um, they have Pete Alonso's free agency after this year. So, Mania showed at the end of last year that I mean, he can contribute in a rotation and in the pen. So he's like, I mean, for a team that wants to contend, they're not going to plug him in as an ace or anything. So, 4 or 5 starter. I don't hate it for the Mets. I think Mets fans should be pretty not stoked, but they should be happy with that signing.
No doubt. And I think out of all the guys that, kind of were used in an interesting way in the bulk for the Giants last year, the one that I felt bad for the most was probably Sean Manaea. Just because, he made one start, I think, in the beginning of the year and just got, it was like, okay, that's it. And you're going to be our bulk innings guy. And then down the stretch, like he pitched really well in that role. Like he was really good. His stuff was at an all-time best. Again, he didn't talk. He didn't, he wasn't vocal about, yeah, maybe he was vocal about maybe wanting to be a starter, but it wasn't to the point of Alex Wood vocalizing that he wants to be a starter, which he was very loud about it. Sean Manaea was a little different. He didn't really make a peep that much, but he pitched great. And even when he was pitching good, it's like he still wasn't getting that opportunity. So out of all those guys, I feel like Manaea, I kind of feel bad for the most, and I'm hoping he's going to get a chance to be an everyday starter with the Mets. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it was probably even more frustrating when they were throwing, at least one or two bullpen games every
Yeah,
time through the rotation. He's like, I can do that. Just like put me in,
yeah.
So, and I've heard, from you and some other folks that got to be in the clubhouse a bit that he's just, a really good dude to be around, good energy. So, hope he thrives in New York, and we'll see what the Mets do. Like I said, it's hard to tell right now what they're doing. Cohen's going to spend the money if he feels like he should, but
Yeah. And
they're
and
spending it on Sean Manaea now.
yep, Sean Manaea. And like if Giants fans want a comp for like what Sean Manaea is, I would say like he's in the mold of like the Hunter Pence, Michael Morse-esque type of energy. Like we're just very positive, upbeat. And like he takes pictures too. Like that's actually a thing. Like I think he was spotted recently at a high school playoff football game taking pictures in San Francisco.
Huh.
So that's really cool side hobby for him. Apparently, lefty pitchers, Randy Johnson, I'm thinking of, takes pictures too. A lot of people go into photography at the end of their careers, which is interesting, kind of. Um, and it is not a shutdown inning episode during the offseason of 2023 without some Los Angeles Dodger news. This one dropped just recently where Teoscar Hernandez, the outfielder, is getting a 1 year, $23.5 million deal. And drum roll, please, only 15 of it's going to be paid this year, and they're deferring the rest.
When this news broke, first place I went was our, Giants Chatter admin group. And when Chris said, well, 8.5 million of it's deferred, I thought he was pulling our leg.
I saw that.
I couldn't tell if he was serious or not, but like here we are again, more deferred money. One question, I don't know, I think I might have brought it up with the Otani deal. When they're paying these guys deferred, so like for those listening, Hernandez, that 8.5 million is distributed from 2030 through 2039.
For
Does
8.5
that
million.
Yeah, for 8.5 million. So it's like 800, 900,000 a year on average if it's all evenly spread. Does that go against their luxury tax threshold at all?
I have been trying to figure that out too. I'm not sure. I'd have to look more into it, but because I don't know if they're going to be paying that from the luxury tax, like from that same type of mold. Like the same thing with Otani. Like, is this going to count for how they build teams after he leaves? Like, are they just going to say, okay, I don't know. I'd have to look to see how it works. But I mean, it's a
Yeah.
valid question.
But yeah, man, I mean, they have an all-star team, and I'll get into it a little bit later, as the Dodgers as a whole. But I mean, they're adding another all-star bat to their lineup. I think at least two-thirds of their lineup will have, projected opening day lineup has played in an all-star game. And I mean, got to be like I said, before. I'm not. If the Giants were doing it, I'd be stoked. So I'm not upset at the Dodgers for doing this. It's just like it's wild to see right now that they're going all in, and a lot of teams wish their teams would. So hats off in that aspect to the Dodgers because I mean, even now more than, a week ago, I know Hernandez isn't as much of a needle mover as Otani and Yamamoto, but their expectations aren't going anywhere but higher up now. I mean, didn't they win like 110, 111 last year?
Something like
Now
that.
you're at so look at the talent they're adding. I mean, are they going to win 115, 120? What are they going to do? I mean, I guess they could probably clinch the division by like mid-August and then just like spot start everybody.
Yeah. The minute I saw their GM Brandon Gomes, say on MLB Network Radio, he said something of the effect of, well, I guess so the first thing that happened was that Teoscar Hernandez went on Instagram and changed his profile picture to him in a Dodger uniform like the night before this happened, and then he quickly changed it back, and it's like everybody's like freaking out, of course. Um, and so I wasn't surprised when I saw it, and then Brandon Gomes, the GM of the Dodgers, went on radio and said, "Yeah, we're still looking to get an outfielder who can smash lefties and hold his own against righties." And it's like, oh my God, he's talking about Teoscar Hernandez. And then a few hours later, it happened. And it's like, okay, this isn't a shock.
Yeah.
But
I
um,
mean, is there an easier job in baseball right now than GM for the Dodgers? It's like, oh, blank check here, go get whoever you want.
yeah, no, I don't know if there is. I don't know if there is. It's definitely I mean, it's also probably a high pressure scenario where if you're Brandon Gomes and Andrew Friedman and this doesn't result in, three championships during this 10-year span, then what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
either way, they probably have enough job security to see at least most of the Otani deal through, so they'll be there for a while at least. But
yeah. Yeah, no, for
yeah,
sure.
another All-Star going to Chavez Ravine.
Yeah. And
You
I'm
hate to see
sure
it.
I'm sure knocking on wood here. Um Speaking of superstars, I love these transitions, by the way. They kind of go nicely. Speaking of superstars, we are in one of Tyler and I's favorite time of year. Last year, we did a show with Barry Bloom to talk about the Hall of Fame. We tried to get a voter on this year. We weren't as successful. We actually should have brought Barry back, maybe. But there was a Hall of Fame. There's the Hall of Fame ballot that was released. We're going to hear about it soon. I believe it usually takes place, the announcement in late January, if I'm not mistaken. I should have gotten a date on that before we came on. But we love talking about the Hall of Fame. There's some new names on there that are kind of intriguing. There's some old names on there that are always intriguing. But like just I guess first and foremost, what kind of sticks out to you with the ballot? Do you want to kind of how should we do this? Should we have like you reveal yours and then I reveal mine and then we could kind of talk about who we have the same?
Yeah, I mean, I know we have a very overlapping ballot,
Yeah.
but just a heads up, I looked it up. The announcement is January 23rd, so 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from yesterday, if you're listening to this the day it came out, probably, but Tuesday the 23rd is when they announce it. But yeah, so I think yeah, I'll give my ballot. You can give yours, and we can talk maybe about even some of the guys who probably aren't get any vote, enough votes to stay on, or that we didn't vote for. But yeah, so let me pull up the ballot. So my 10 are Carlos Beltran, Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, Andrew Jones, Joe Mauer, Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez, Gary Sheffield, Billy Wagner, and Andy Pettit.
Okay. And then my
The
10.
perfect, you guys just heard the perfect ballot. Go,
Okay,
Steven.
okay. I see. My 10 is Carlos Beltran, Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, Andrew Jones, Joe Mauer, Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez, Gary Sheffield, Chase Utley, and Billy Wagner.
All right,
So,
so we have nine of the same. You went Utley, I went Pettit.
okay, why
I think he was, a pretty established and contributing pitcher in his era. He was on, many championship teams. He had a solid career. He's definitely like my 10th guy on the ballot. I don't think he's necessarily a slam dunk. I'm also for, right now I'm just like put all the PED guys in that deserve to be there. I think he deserves to be there. I don't worry about the allegations or, anything that he may or may not have done because there's already guys, we've talked about it at length. There's guys in already that have done the things that other people are getting held out for doing. So just to kind of stay strong, no PED pun intended, I went with Pettit.
Okay, yeah. No, I get it. And I think Pettit was a good pitcher during that era where, especially in the American League East, where the entire goal of limiting offense was just so difficult. And Musina had to deal with it. Schilling had to deal with it. Pedro had to deal with it. There's some arm Clemens had to deal with it. There's a lot of arms in that era that really had to work at limiting offense, and Pettit was one of them. I think he was very good, but I don't think he was Hall of Fame worthy. I think if you stick him, and I know that this is an
256 wins.
I get it, but he was also on the New York Yankees, and it's not a team award. Um, and I know people
So
use
now
that.
we're punishing guys for who they played for, who drafted them, who developed them. That's on them now.
No, not exactly, but and I know people, and I know I'm being hypocritical because people use that argument for Jeter. But I disagree with that argument because Jeter had 3,000 hits and he had all the milestones he could get offensively. Um, but Pettit, I don't know. I think the longevity was there, but I just didn't see him as dominant over one specific stretch of time, like Pedro was, like Schilling was, like Mussina might have been. Mussina might be his closest comp, because maybe you can make that same argument with Mussina. Um, but I just don't. I'm just not there yet on Andy Pettit. Um, but I will say for Chase Utley, I'll give kind of my reasoning about Chase Utley, then you could respond in a second. Um, I think he's one of the best second basemen of his era. I think there's Robinson Cano, and then there's Chase Utley. And I know you hate when I do this, but in the time in which Chase Utley played, you're shaking your head already. In the time in which Chase Utley played, he was not just only the one of the best second basemen in baseball, he was one of the best players in baseball. Like if you look at the WAR list during Chase Utley's career, it was literally Miguel Cabrera, Pujols, Trout, A-Rod, I think was in there too, and then Chase Utley was like fifth on that
We've
list.
talked about this, Steven. When you choose like a very finite time span, not everyone else's peak overlaps. Like you could have
But
like
still, that he
a
was
guy who was
there during.
better over the first 4 years, but it doesn't overlap from like 2006 to 2018 or whatever the hell it was.
It was
I mean, I get
something
what you're
like
saying.
that.
Obviously, anytime you're mentioned with Cabrera and Pujols and Trout, I mean, you're obviously very talented. I'm not saying, but can I tell you why I didn't include him?
Yes.
Because Jeff Kent didn't get in. And Jeff Kent is statistically, and I've said it before, I'm actually not a really big Jeff Kent fan. Even when he was on the Giants, I rooted for him to do well, but Jeff Kent as a person, not a big fan of. So I want to start with that. It's not because I'm like a diehard Jeff Kent fan, but you have the statistically the best second baseman of all time, and he didn't get in. So why should the next second baseman on the ballot just waltz right? Like, what's the difference here? And so I look at it as a little different from my PED argument, how guys are in or guys have been held out for doing the same thing, because that's on the writers. But when you're looking statistically at these guys and you let a guy who is statistically the one of the best, if not the best second baseman of all time, and he languishes on the ballot for 10 years and then falls off, and then Chase Utley pops up, and now it's like, oh, he was such a great second baseman. What the hell about Jeff Kent?
No, I understand. I understand. And like the thing about the PED guys is that like I would vote for them all before David Ortiz got in, and I would vote for them all after David Ortiz got in. The thing
And
about Chase Up,
Pudge
yes, the thing
and
about
Mike Piazza.
I know Piazza, Bagwell, all those guys did it. I understand. But here's the thing about Utley. Just because Jeff Kent didn't get in, and I thought he would have got in, I would have voted for him if I had a vote. Just because he didn't get in, I would not hold that against any other future second baseman. Because I think if there's a Hall of Famer on the ballot, you vote for them. Like regard, and I think Jeff Kent was better than Sandberg, Biggio, Alomar. You know,
Jeff
I think
Kent had
Utley.
600 more hits, 120 more home runs, higher batting average by 15 points, 500 more RBIs, scored 300 more runs.
Than Chase Utley.
Yeah,
I'm not going to argue that
200 more
Chase.
runs, only 200 more runs.
Yeah, I will not
But
argue that Jeff Kent is not a Hall of Famer. He definitely is. I think they were both Hall of Famers. That's what I'll say.
I agree to an extent. Like I think if Kent was in, I'd probably vote for Utley. And if Utley
Okay.
gets in, I really won't be that upset if he gets in. I'm just not going to vote for him at least this year because I've got a full ballot of 10 of guys that I'm happy with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess real quick, touching on some of the other names on here that are interesting, like Bartolo Colon, I think has an interesting case. Um, he's a PED guy, but also he's got the longevity. He has a Cy Young. He's got just it's longevity, but I don't know if there's like a good 7 year span in there where he was consistently the best pitcher in the game. I think he just lasted a long time. Um,
Yeah.
and then trying to think, I think
Uh,
we could touch on Joe Mauer's case. He's an interesting one. We both have him.
yeah, I think especially myself as a lot of Giants fans, I'm interested to see how his candidacy goes because I think kind of like Utley and Kent are both Hall of Famers. I think him and Buster Posey are both Hall of Famers. So I think if Mauer gets in right now, he's at 83.1% right now with about 35% of ballots known. I think if he gets right in, I think that paves the way for Buster to also get right in. Mauer has a little bit more of the counting stats. He also played a little bit longer, made that transition to first full time. And then, conversely, Buster won every award an offensive player can win, some of them multiple times. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on Mauer. I think he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, me too. And I think his case, so Buster's kind of in an interesting spot because Buster's case could get a lot of help by in a few different ways. One, obviously, if Mauer gets in, right? It's hard to get in as a catcher. Mauer had a stretch where he was not only the best catcher, he was one of the best hitters in baseball. He's got batting titles, he's got all that. Posey has a chance where if he does not get in on his first year of induction, he will likely see Yadier Molina get in the next year. And if Molina's in and Posey's
Uh,
not, there's a serious problem.
See, that's a whole thing for me too, because I've looked at this a lot. I've talked to some people about it quite a bit. Like Yachty is like all all glove and longevity. That's really all he is. I mean, he hit for a decent average, but that's about it. He's a Hall of Famer, don't get me wrong. But I agree. I think Mauer and Posey might fluctuate a little bit, whereas Yadi Molina, most people think he's like a slam dunk Hall of Famer, like first ballot, put him on in. And I comparing him to both Mauer and Posey. And I don't like to live and die by war, but Mauer's got both of them on war. Posey's a little bit higher than Molina. It's just weird to me. I think all three are Hall of Famers. I love the catching position, so I think that all three of them are. But it's just weird to me how like Yachty's looked at as the slam dunk guy, the first ballot Hall of Famer, and then Posey and Mauer are kind of like, oh, will they get in? How many years will it take? We'll see.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think the longevity, people dig longevity for catchers, but honestly, it's such a tough and demanding position that I think a sample size that Mauer and Posey and those guys have is enough for catchers to get in because there's not a lot of them, and I think even with that small sample size, they're still one of the best of all. They're still two of the best of all time for sure. Um, and then I've also seen some like discussion about Jimmy Rollins, and he's kind of got like I don't think there's enough years offensively that he has. I think his base running and defense is pretty good. But a lot of people have Jimmy Rollins as being a yes. We both didn't, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, he's honestly a name where I looked at it on the ballot and I was like, yeah, he had a really good career, but I never really thought about including him on my ballot. He had a really strong, probably like what, 3 or 4 years there with Philly. But yeah, not that like 6, 7, 8 year stretch that a lot of people look at to be able to say like, here's his Hall of Fame stretch right here. Um, that's where I was with Rollins. How about you? What was your why are you
Yeah,
anti J Roll?
same thing. He's got some cool like little anecdotes that are specific to shortstop. Like I think some of his doubles numbers, doubles and homers and steals, like that's a pretty good package to, if you want to vote for Rollins, I have no problem. I don't think it's absurd, but um yeah, I just don't think the offense like is there enough. He's got some of like the longevity stats that you might like. Um, in terms of hits, I think he's up there in hits. I'm pulling it up right now. He's got
24, 55.
24, 55 hits. And then the homers is at 231, steals at 470, and then a 264 lifetime hitter. I don't think that there's enough there consistently offensively. He did win an MVP and did go through a stretch where he was winning some gold gloves, but um Yeah, probably the Hall of very, very good for Jimmy Rollins. Although it does sound like a name that is a Hall of Famer. Like Jimmy Rollins, like does sound like a Hall of Fame name. Like if you
It
think
sounds
about
like he
it,
made the Hall of Fame in like the 1920s. Ah, Jimmy Rollins.
Jimmy
You know,
Rollins, yeah, one of the black and
one
white.
guy yeah, one guy I'll mention is David Wright. I
Okay,
think,
yeah,
he's one of those. I think he's one of those classic what ifs. Like, what if he didn't start getting hurt? What if he could have had a healthy career? Because I mean, through the first, decade's career, he was probably on the right track, and then he just fell off, got hurt, missed a ton of time. Over his last 4 seasons, it looks like he played about 80 games. So, you know, I just don't think, I think if he could have stayed healthy, he definitely would have been there. But again, one of those guys where I just looked at and was like, yeah, I mean, he had a hell of a career, Hall of very good for me as well on David Wright, but one that I think it looks like he'll probably stick on the ballot. He's at 7.4 right now. Just needs 10% or 10 more votes to stick on the ballot for at least another year. So I think he'll stick around, but
I think he's going to stick around for a while. And not that I think he's a Hall of Famer, but that I think New York people love him. And it seems like every single damn vote is coming out of New York.
yeah, I think he'll probably stick for all 10, to be honest.
Yeah,
Because
he might
I
stay
don't
for,
think there will
yeah,
ever be under 5% that won't put him on his ballot.
yeah, no, but I agree. Not a Hall of Famer. Again, was trending that way. He's another guy that seems like you hear David Wright, you would think Hall of Fame, but then when you look at the stats, it was like, yeah, it was too short of a window. The injuries haunted him the same way they haunted Don Mattingly, um, and players like that. So, um,
So I
difficult to
got
leave him
two
off.
more really quick. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got two more. One not on our ballots, one on our ballots. One, got to throw a bone to our first ever guest, Andrew Pasquini. His boy, Francisco Rodriguez, K-Rod. He's sitting at 7.4 right now, same as David Wright. He is dead set that K-Rod's a Hall of Famer. He's slowly converting me there. I think maybe Billy Wagner getting in might help his case because then he'll be the best reliever on the ballot. Um, I think part of his thing, and we've probably talked about it before, is just that, he had such a roller coaster of a career. He came out with the Angels and was just lights out. Then he just kind of went up and down a bit. He went from he went made the All-Star team in '09 with the Mets and then didn't make another All-Star team until 14 with the Brewers. And he had some rough years there with the Mets and the Brewers between those two appearances. So not just he didn't just like straight deal all the way throughout his career. He had a very up and down career. But what are your thoughts on Rodriguez?
Yeah, I agree. Just a lot of ups and downs. Like there's some great years here at the beginning with the Angels, and then there's just a drop off. Then he started going into a new team every year. I didn't think anything of Francisco Rodriguez, I'll be honest. And then when Andrew mentioned it to us, and I noticed that he had 437 saves and a sub 2.9 ERA, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit. Now it's not as good as numbers of Billy Wagner. Like Wagner's much better on paper. But it is interesting when you have those counting stats. But like you mentioned, just there wasn't a lot to go based off of outside of, pretty much after the time in Anaheim, there just wasn't a lot there to go based off of. There were some injury years, there were some years where he was traded, and and there's some high ERA years. I mean, I just don't think it was enough. But I don't think it was the level of consistency that we have come to know with Billy Wagner and some of the other guys. But Lee Smith is in. I don't know if there's a comp there, but it's hard to get in as a reliever. So maybe he's a guy that ends up going in on like a veterans committee. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, but wanted to give him a shout. And then last guy that at least I'll bring up, Gary Sheffield. Last year on the ballot, most likely going to end up short. Right now, he's right at 75%. Traditionally, the unannounced ballots are very anti-PED. He hasn't made up nearly as many votes as he needed to get there. So probably going to fall off. But again, one of those guys that if the voters weren't gatekeepers on who did what and who they want to believe did what, he's probably a slam dunk guy.
Do you want to hear a hot take?
Yes.
We are in the podcast world, so we have to drop some hot takes every now and then. Even though I try to keep it, but Gary Sheffield should have been on every single ballot for anybody that voted Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens.
That's a hot take. I mean, he's
Not
not
because he's the
at
same
that
level as
echelon.
them, but because he's a Hall of Famer. And like
Yeah.
he's got the Balco stuff, but like
Who doesn't?
the reason I say the whole Clemens Bonds thing is because he's like forgotten. Him and Sammy Sosa on everything Hall of Fame are getting the raw end of the stick because it's always Bonds, Clemens. We're hearing a little bit more about Manny and A-Rod, but we don't hear enough about Sheffield. And it's like then you look at his numbers and it's like 509 home runs, 292 batting average, over almost 2,700 hits, a 907 lifetime OPS. And it's like the reason we're not so quick to vote for Gary Sheffield is because we don't identify him with a certain team. If Gary Sheffield put up the same numbers in one place, let's say he played in Atlanta his entire career, and he put up those same numbers in Atlanta and didn't move around, he'd be in already. No doubt, he'd be in the same thing as Big Poppy, those Piazza, Bagwell, those that same type of player that just waltzes right in with no second guess. But I think the amount of teams he played on has an effect on his legacy, and people can't get past that.
You
Um,
might be looking right now, but how many teams did Gary Sheffield play for?
I am looking at it right now, but I'm not counting. But let's see, one, two,
I see
three.
you looking. You are counting. You are
I am
exactly
counting.
counting right
I
now.
said I'm on the page. One, two,
8.
three, four, five, six, seven, eight. 8 teams. 8 teams.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that hurt Fred McGriff. Fred McGriff, like just because he didn't hit 7 more home runs, it didn't hit 500. We're gonna penalize a guy for that, you know. And
Well,
just because he
yeah. Well,
played on a
500
million
doesn't even
teams.
matter anymore because we're holding out guys that have hit 500. So 500 isn't really what it used to be anymore. But
Yeah.
one
But
last
like
thing on
Sheffield,
Sheffield.
yeah.
If you grew up in my era, like you definitely at least messed around with the Gary Sheffield bat wiggle, like at least during BP.
Yeah.
You know the like.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was fun. I did that playing wiffle ball like my whole childhood.
Yeah. I was doing it the other day, but the power numbers are just absurd. Over 30 home runs, one, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Led the league in OPS, led the league in on base, led the league in batting average. Um, MVP finishes, a bunch of them. Silver Sluggers, All Star games, an All Star game 9 times. Just a monster. Yeah, I think he's a monster offensively. And if he was a DH, maybe that would help because a lot of the defensive numbers bring the overall cumulative WAR down. Um, but I think he's definitely in. But kind of sad that he's not getting that support. But I hope
Yeah.
he gets in one day. Um,
Yeah. Well,
moving on.
should we go to everyone's favorite portion of any shutdown inning episode?
Yes, everyone's favorite portion of the shutdown inning where we go over some of our ups and downs since we last recorded. We'll start with the downs. I am the downs this week. So I'll start. Number one, this isn't much of a down, but it's more of a hats off. Michael Brantley retired, and Michael Brantley for a long time was described as being the definition of a true professional. You always hear the term veteran presence and professional at bats, and Michael Brantley was just that. He had an incredible career, spanning in parts of 15 years at the big league level. Just a really consistent offensive player in every lineup that he was in. He had some struggles staying healthy as he got into his 30s, which is the story of a lot of people. But just definitely a really good career in Cleveland. He ended up winning a championship, or he did not end up winning a championship. Sorry. No, he did end up winning a championship. Jeez, in 2022. Um, but just a good career. A stable. He was never an aircraft carrier, but a good career. So I wanted to give him some love. Not necessarily a down, but a nice career for Michael Brantley.
Yeah, I mean, really solid career. Like you said, he was never like the anchor in a lineup, but if you had like a strong two or three guys in your lineup already, and Brantley was like your fourth or fifth best hitter, your team was in a really good spot because you knew that you could rely on him to, when he was healthy, to give you consistent at bats and, like you said, be a leader in the clubhouse as well, which can be invaluable.
No doubt. So that's my first down, which is not really a down. My second down. This is where we get into some negative stuff. Let's go back to the Hall of Fame real quick. Down number two. I'm so down on some of the baseball writers and their ballots that are coming out. Okay. If you are voting for someone and you leave them off the ballot because a new person came on and you're at 10 and you don't have enough room, that's fine. Okay. But if you're taking people off your ballot and then voting for six people or four people, what are we doing? I just don't understand removing people from their ballot. I mean, there's a writer in Sacramento. I'm not going to name names, but you can find who it is. I got in a conversation with them on Twitter, and they had removed Manny and A-Rod, and they ended up
And
still
Andrew
voting for
Jones
four,
and Billy Wagner. He voted
and
for
Billy
two.
Wagner. Yeah,
And he only
yeah.
voted
I
for
don't know what
two,
the exact
Steven.
two. Yes. Um, and and I, it just didn't make much sense, right? And like, there's nothing that that player could have done the year before to constitute being thrown off the ballot. Manny Ramirez and A-Rod did not play baseball last year. What could they have possibly done to lose a vote on a not filled ballot? Like, I just don't understand. It's like
Yeah.
taking them off just to take them off. And then the reasoning was, oh, well, I could still vote for him next year. The entire point of the Hall of Fame is to vote on the Hall of Famers. And also I don't really like the argument like Adrian Beltre's polling at 98%. Everybody knows that Adrian Beltre is the most slam dunk Hall of Famer out there on this ballot. And the reason people don't vote for the slam dunk guys, it's because, oh, we want to give David Wright an extra year on the ballot. Like, give me a break. Like, vote for the
Yeah.
Hall of Famers. Like, enough with this strategy stuff. Vote for the people that, chances are if they're pulling at 7%, they're not a Hall of Famer anyways. Like, you're either in or you're not. And it's like, if
Yeah.
we have to make a significant argument for David Wright and try to persuade people, then chances are then he's not a Hall of Famer. So, I mean, I'm just so over the fact that these writers are removing, and again, usually when it doesn't come to PEDs, they usually get it right. When it comes to PEDs, that's when they start messing up. Um, but I'm just over the fact that A-Rod
Yeah.
and Manny were left off this ballot with room. Like it just doesn't
Yeah. I
make
mean,
sense.
if you follow Ryan Thibodeau, not Mr. Tibbs, if you follow the Hall of Fame trackers at all, you've probably at least seen this tracker if you haven't gone there yourself. Um, but he has an awesome spreadsheet with like historical every year across the bottom too. But you can see green for added vote for returning players, red for they didn't vote for them after they did the previous year. And I get taking a couple guys off if you need to vote for some newcomers. So like if you
Yep,
already had a full ballot and you want to vote for Beltre and Mauer, cool. Two guys
completely
you
fine.
can't vote for two guys. But there's some really, really odd ones on here where he said the ballot's not full. Like one guy decided, I'm just not going to vote for Beltran, Burley, and Pettit this year after I did last year. I saw another one earlier where like there was like four or five guys they didn't vote for after a full ballot. This guy took off Beltran, Helton, Pettit, Rodriguez, Francisco Rodriguez, and Billy Wagner, and voted for seven guys. Like it just doesn't make any sense. If they're a Hall of Famer and you voted for them in the past and you have spots on your ballot, then you should probably still vote for them. But hey, it's their vote. It's just making it more and more of a joke to
Yeah.
me.
It's like, well, Todd Helton was a Hall of Famer in 2019, but he really wasn't in 2020. But then I thought again in 2021 and he was. It's like a lot of these people haven't covered the sport and since the Flintstones were roaming the earth. Um oh no, that was a cartoon that didn't actually happen. Don't get on me
Yeah, I
for that
mean,
one.
like I said, dude, like I don't know, like I love the Hall of Fame. It's important to me, not as much as it used to be, but it just seems like they gotta figure something out to like keep it legitimate, because the way that some of these writers act, whether it's gatekeeping on PED guys or how they manage or mismanage their votes, it's just like, what are we doing?
Yep. What are
And
we doing?
it's just frustrating to watch.
No doubt. And then real quickly here, Wander Franco getting in some well, was already in some trouble, and then some really grueling details about his whole situation came out. And I think I put him on here once before, but I'll put him on again. Wander Franco probably at this point will never play baseball again, and rightfully so. I'm not going to say the details on here. If you want to go check him out, go look him up, but it's not good. And hopefully he never puts on a uniform again, but he is as down of a down as you could possibly get on this podcast. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all we really need to say. It's unfortunate that someone with so much talent is also a garbage human being.
Yep. Yep. Tough. And big contract, and hopefully he never sees any of it. I don't know what the deal is with that, but again, that's the last thing that anybody's thinking about is him ever donning a uniform again. But yeah, how about some ups?
Yeah, let's end on some high notes here. Oh,
Ah,
first one I'm not too happy on, but first up, the Dodgers, man. We talked about it earlier. They're basically fielding the 2024 National League All-Star team at this point. I mentioned earlier their lineup. So now that they signed Teoscar Hernandez, their projected lineup is Mookie Betts at second base, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, Will Smith, Max Muncy, James Outman, Teoscar Hernandez, Jason Hayward, Gavin Lux. Like, holy crap. Like, actually, I think Hayward's made an all-star team. So is that 8 guys? 8 of their 9 projected starting lineup have made an all-star team.
yep. And you know who else
And
was
that's
a
not even
Dodger
talking
second
about their
baseman?
rotation.
Yeah, the
Who?
rotation. You know who else was a Dodger second baseman at one point, Tyler?
A
Chase
lot of
Utley.
people. Oh, gosh. So was Jeff Kent. Boom, roasted.
Yeah. I'm not anti Jeff Kent.
But yeah, I mean, we talked about him enough a little bit earlier, but I mean, right now they're as up as a major league team could be in an off season, I believe. So Dodgers first up for me.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, again, nothing wrong with what they're doing. I think other teams are just trying to figure out how to compete with them at this point. But just an incredible offseason. We knew it was coming. Again, they made very little moves last offseason. We've been saying that this is their offseason. It seems like every year has been considered this is the Giants offseason, and they haven't done this. So props to the Dodgers who have.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so they're number one. And you mentioned one thing and then I'll move on. You said that teams are trying to like keep up with them. I don't think there's any chance to keep up with them at this point. I think you just need to build as best a team possible within your whatever your system is, and hope you're hot when they're not in October. Like they're gonna have to have some epic meltdowns too. I mean, you think the NL West is probably going to them for at least 5 or 6 years straight, right?
No, no doubt. No doubt.
At least.
Absolutely.
So up number 2, I'm going to the Shota Imanaga buzz. His window closes Thursday, I believe. So he's kind of the next domino, I believe, to fall, just because he's one of the few guys that has a finish line of when he can sign. This is one where we kind of alluded to earlier, like, who do we listen to? Who are the front runners? Who's in? Who's out? I think was it yesterday or today, John Heyman said it looked like it was the Giants, and then like 2 hours later said that the Giants are out on him. uh, you know, Cubs, Red Sox, other mentioned front runners. So it seems like he's got it down to 4 or 5 teams and just trying to decide where he goes now. So since he's got that finish line in view, I think that's where his buzz has really been up the last couple of days.
Yeah, thank God. Hopefully, his market, well, it has to settle unless he wants to return back to Japan for another season, which I don't think he wants to do. So he better make up his mind soon. Um, and I hope it causes all the other marbles behind him to drop. And the interesting thing about like what's happening now with some of these players that are getting off the board, like when you look at Sean Manaea, kind of getting off the board, and a guy like that, a lot of these teams and their backup plans are being signed. Their backup plans are being signed. So if they don't sign Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery or some of these guys, they're screwed. They don't have a backup plan. So it's almost like some teams are being cornered into signing different players. Like, I mean, who knows? Sean Manaea could have been a backup plan to a team if they don't get, Inamaga or Montgomery. Granted, a very low key backup plan at that, but still, if you don't get Blake Snell, now your backup plan's already signed. So it's kind of like interesting how Scott Boras is playing this, and he's doing what he does. He's the best for a reason.
Yep.
Not that
Yeah.
he's
And then so
Inamaga's agent. He's not. I don't think.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so, but who
Yeah.
knows? He represents like half of baseball. Um, and then last, I'm gonna go with the Marlins. They hired Rachel Balkovec. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I think I got it as their director of player development. This is obviously impactful. Female hire. She's only 36, and previously you might have remembered that name. She was a manager of a Yankees minor league team for the last couple of years. So just throwing it up there for getting some more diversity in the front office and coaching staffs of these teams who are giving it to the best person for the job.
Yeah, no doubt. And she's I don't know if you've seen some of the features out there that have been done on her by MLB Network, a bunch of others. She's really good. I think the players really, really like her. And it's like different territory because, it's almost like you kind of have to establish when you're a trailblazer, you kind of have to establish, what goes into the job and some of the feedback you're going to get on the fly. And I'm glad that she's going to get a chance to do it with the Marlins, who have kind of cemented themselves as kind of a not cutting edge, but inclusive organization that, they hired Kim Ng. And when Derek Jeter was there, I think being inclusive and being diverse was a big reason, or was a big focus for them. And it continues. The Marlins ended up losing Kim Ng because they wanted to put somebody above her, which is not fair. Somebody should have been below her. But it's good that she's getting a chance. Rachel's getting a chance to be in player development. And the people in player development, people don't know this, like they are some of the hardest working people in the organization just because there's so many affiliates that they have to check out. There's so much communication with managers, with players. You got to have a personalized idea for all these guys. And it seems like she's the best one for the job. So hats off and congrats. Looking forward to Marlins are going to be an interesting club these next few years. I put them in the same boat as the Reds as a team to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's definitely a very intensive role that maybe not, on surface level, you think front office, you think, GM, like president of baseball ops, but that player development, category of things, it's a heavy workload. And kind of just, you know, promote back our last episode, we had Jake McKinley on. He was the vice president of player development for the Brewers. It's a heavy workload. So, yeah, tip of the cap to Rachel there, and hope for some strong years for the Marlins in the future.
No
So
doubt. And do you want to hear some breaking news on the
yes,
pod? Breaking on the pod
breaking. Womp
from
womp
Bob
womp.
Nightingale of USA Today. The Chicago Cubs have reached a tentative deal with Japanese pitcher Shota Imanaga. He will undergo physical in Chicago on Thursday before the deal becomes official. So the
So we just need a
Cubs,
credible source to tell us now.
despite his kind of awkwardness at times, I trust Nightingale
I'm like 90% sure that I had Imanaga going to the Cubs on my
on the
predictions
Giants
board.
board.
Let's go.
Well, congratulations. Yeah, that's big move for the Cubs. They are trying to find their way back. We've talked about it on the podcast that they're not going to give Craig Counsell a losing team. That's not what he's there for. So they're going all in, and I have the board up right now. Tyler has him going to the Cubs. Nicely done. I had him making home in Boston, which was close because they were involved, I think, right?
Yeah, was I the only one that had Cubs?
You were. You were. Nobody else got that one.
Yes.
I got Teoscar to the Dodgers. I predicted that one right. You had
Yeah,
him
just so you
going to
guys know,
LA.
listening, if you're not on Giants Chatter, we do a prediction board for the top 15 free agents, and there's no like prize, but we always kind of try to get the high score. So
Yeah,
anyway, did we
definitely.
shut it
Well,
down again, Steven?
we shut it down
Because we
again.
bored
This was a
everyone
long
with our
episode, I'd imagine. I'm scared to look at how long this one ended up being, but
a little over
um,
an hour.
probably a little over. Yeah, but we got to end it on some breaking news. So,
There we go.
um,
You heard it here first when you listen to it tomorrow.
exactly. Or Friday, or happy Saturday, everybody. Happy Sunday. No, yeah, or never. No, we actually have a fan base now.
Yeah,
Hi,
thank you
YouTube
again to everyone
people.
who's been listening, watching, giving us some feedback. We appreciate you all. Thanks for checking us out.
Yeah, perfect.
Smash
Thanks.
that subscribe button.
Smash the subscribe button, smash the podcast platform subscribe button, all that fun stuff. And we will see you next time.
That's what's up.
Atta boop.